Okay, let's just dive right into this. For centuries, the map of world-class winemaking has been strictly defined by geography. We've basically been taught that fine wine requires the temperate climates of Europe, the Americas, or Oceania. End of story, right? Well, what if I told you that one of the absolute most fascinating and complex terroirs emerging today sits smack in the middle of a tropical zone, right between latitudes 7 and 10 degrees north? Today, we're exploring a geographical loophole that literally defies everything we know about agronomy. We're unpacking the tropical paradox of Ethiopian viticulture.
Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly excited about this one. We're going to conduct a masterclass on the surprising and deeply complex world of Ethiopian winology. We're going to put on our professional sommelier hats today to understand exactly how this ancient nation, the one famous as the birthplace of coffee, is now producing remarkably sophisticated Vitis vinifera wines that are turning heads in fine dining establishments all over the globe.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, the tropical wine paradox. 2, extreme altitude volcanic terroir. 3, a sommelier's tasting notes. 4, the injera pairing challenge. And finally, number 5, mastering the Doro Watt.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the tropical wine paradox, breaking the rules of the Equator.
To really appreciate what's happening in Ethiopia, we have to understand why producing fine wine here shouldn't theoretically be possible at all. Think about traditional European or Old World viticulture. It absolutely relies on the freezing temperatures of winter. That cold forces the vine into dormancy. It's this vital rest period where the plant literally shuts down and stores energy. But in Ethiopia's tropical climate, you've got constant, relentless heat and 2 distinct monsoon seasons. Without a winter break, the vine is tricked into continuous, non-stop growth. Biologically, this threatens to rapidly deplete the crucial acidity in the grapes, totally exhausting the vine and giving you wines that are flat, overly sweet, and just completely unbalanced. So how on earth do they fix this?
That brings us to Section 2, extreme altitude volcanic terroir, the Rift Valley's secret.
The answer to this tropical paradox is hidden in the majestic geography of the Great Rift Valley, specifically through a physical phenomenon known as the dry adiabatic lapse rate. Simply put, for every 100 meters you climb vertically, the air temperature drops by about 0.6 degrees Celsius. Ethiopian vineyards aren't planted down at sea level. They are planted at staggering extreme altitudes of 1,800 to 2,200 meters. This physical law creates a microclimate with massive diurnal shifts. That means you get intense tropical sun during the day to beautifully ripen the fruit, followed by drastically cool nights. Those freezing nights are the absolute savior of Ethiopian wine. They slam the brakes on the vine's metabolism, preserving the vibrant, crucial acidity and freshness of the grapes.
But altitude is really only half the story here. The Great Rift Valley offers an incredibly unique soil profile. We are talking about deep basalt foundations, extrusive igneous rocks, and volcanic tuff. Why does this matter when you actually pour the glass? Because this highly porous volcanic soil provides exceptional vertical drainage during those heavy monsoons, completely preventing the roots from rotting. Then, during the dry season, it forces those vine roots to dig deep, deep into the earth, to hunt down moisture and essential micronutrients like iron and magnesium. That struggle? It gives the resulting wines incredible concentration, density, and a highly sought-after saline mineral tension.
Nature still needs a little help, though, which brings us to the attitude portion of the terroir, human intervention. Because there is no winter, winemakers literally have to simulate one. They use a fascinating technique called forced dormancy. Through severe, strategic pruning and surgically controlled water stress using drip irrigation, they essentially force the vine to shut down. They trick the plant into ignoring one of its natural growth cycles to prevent a double harvest. By deliberately sacrificing volume, they force all of the vine's metabolic energy and aromatic precursors into a single, incredibly high-quality annual harvest. It's just a masterful manipulation of the vine's biology.
Okay, moving on to Section 3, a sommelier's tasting notes, sensory analysis of the Rift Valley.
Let's put all this theory to the test and conduct a professional sensory analysis to see exactly what happens to classic grapes grown near the equator up at 2,000 meters in volcanic ash. Let's look at the reds first, specifically Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon. The extreme UV radiation at this altitude forces the grapes to develop incredibly thick skins just to protect themselves. For a sommelier, this translates to phenomenal phenolic ripeness. Visually, these wines are an impenetrable deep ruby with vibrant purple edges.
On the nose, you get this beautiful core of ripe black fruit, think blackberry and cassis. But what makes it distinctly Ethiopian is the layer of exotic spices. We're talking white pepper mixed with ethereal notes of incense and myrrh. And structurally, because of the long maturation, the tannins are incredibly fine and polished, finishing with a lingering, serious minerality of flint and volcanic ash.
In the whites, they are equally mind-bending. Chenin Blanc in particular has proven to be an absolute revelation here. You get this really striking contrast. On one hand, the intense tropical sun gives the wine a beautiful unctuosity and weight, pulling out aromas of ripe mango and papaya. But because of those freezing high-altitude nights and that volcanic soil, all that richness is tightly bound by a vibrant, citrusy acidity and a profoundly saline, chalky backbone. It is a super clean, mineral-driven finish that completely shatters the stereotype that hot climate whites have to be flabby or flat.
Which leads us to Section 4, the Injera Pairing Challenge, lactic acidity and fermentation.
Moving out of the tasting room and over to the dining table, Ethiopian cuisine poses a massive, totally rule-breaking challenge for traditional enogastronomy. And the foundation of that challenge starts directly with injera. Injera isn't just bread, it is the plate, it's the utensil, and it's the structural base of the entire meal. Made from fermented teff grain, it has a very distinct, sharp lactic acidity, kind of like the tang of a strong sourdough or plain yogurt, and a really spongy texture. Now, if you pair this with a buttery, heavily oaked Chardonnay, the lactic tang of the bread will clash horribly, creating this awful metallic taste. The sommelier's solution here is the mirrored acidity strategy. You absolutely need a high-acid, unoaked, vibrant white wine, like that Ethiopian Chenin Blanc we were just talking about, to seamlessly mirror the lactic tang and sharply cut right through that spongy texture, cleansing your palate perfectly.
And finally, Section 5, Mastering the Doro Wat, the ultimate sommelier test. If injera is the foundation, successfully matching a wine to the dense, rich, and intensely spicy Doro Wat chicken stew is the ultimate test. Let's analytically deconstruct the anatomy of this pairing. First up, the dish is cooked in niter kiba, which is a spiced, clarified butter. That heavy fat requires high acidity to scrub the palate clean. Second, the heat comes from berberi spice, a fiery blend of chili and aromatics. That heat demands juicy fruit to soothe it, and it absolutely requires low or highly polished tannins. Finally, the base of the stew is a dense, deeply caramelized onion sauce that takes literally hours to make. It has massive structural weight. A light wine would just disappear entirely. The perfect mathematical solution? A finely crafted Ethiopian Syrah or Syrah Merlot blend.
Heavy tannins in chili heat are a disastrous collision. This is the golden rule of pairing spicy food, folks. If you take a massive, heavily extracted, highly tannic red wine and pair it with the capsaicin and berbere spice, they literally go to war in your mouth. The tannins exacerbate the burning sensation, completely stripping your palate of moisture and leaving behind an awful, bitter, metallic sensation. This is exactly why the polished, fine-grained tannins of high-altitude Ethiopian Syrah are mandatory here. They offer the needed structure without starting a fire on your tongue.
So the crucial takeaway is that Syrah doesn't just survive the Doro Wat mechanically, it acts as the perfect aromatic bridge. The intrinsic flavor profile of Syrah harmonizes directly with the ingredients on the plate. The wine's natural white and black pepper notes perfectly mirror the pungency of the berbere spice. The smoky, almost bacon-like undertones of the Syrah lock right into those deep, sweet, slow-cooked caramelized onions. And the wine's earthy minerality from those volcanic soils, it connects beautifully to the complex, earthy spices like fenugreek in the stew. It's honestly a masterclass in complementary pairing.
As we wrap up this explainer, it's clear Ethiopia is doing something profoundly special. To secure its future on the global stage, the industry is taking 3 major steps. First, they're heavily embracing organic and biofertilizer practices to protect the immense biodiversity of the Rift Valley. Second, they're empowering an entire new generation of local Ethiopian enologists, agronomists, and sommeliers to take real leadership of their own terroir. And third, they are actively working to establish formal geographical indications, or GIs, to legally protect their regions and guarantee world-class credibility and quality standards for export markets.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen how human ingenuity and the extreme volcanic altitude of the Great Rift Valley have completely shattered the tropical paradox. They're out there producing complex, deeply mineral, structurally profound wines that not only hold their own, but actually offer completely new pairing dimensions for global gastronomy. So, I'll leave you with this.
As climate change continuously forces the wine industry to look for new horizons, is the Rift Valley the next great frontier of global wine? I highly encourage you to track down a bottle, pour yourself a glass, and taste the answer for yourself.